Now, we know this came out late last night. Really, this came out on July the 1st. It just really picked up steam last night. And I'm here to tell you there is more receipts that has been found about Kelsey Mitchell family speaking negatively against Caitlin Clark.
Kelsey Mitchell's family didn't just throw shade at Caitlin Clark. They lit the fuse on a controversy that's tearing through the Indiana Fever locker room like wildfire. What started as a few cryptic tweets quickly turned into a full-blown narrative war, and the target was clear: Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation who's been crowned the face of the franchise before even finishing her first season.
Now, these are some of the receipts that has been found, and I'm telling you right now, this is more members of Kelsey Mitchell family speaking out against Caitlin.
But now, the backlash isn't coming from opponents or bitter fans, it's coming from inside the house. Mitchell's relatives have gone public with bold, biting statements that question Clark's leadership, her toughness, and whether she truly deserves the spotlight she's been handed, and the timing couldn't be worse.
And this is some of the talk right here. This is just some of the stuff. It goes on to say, Indiana needs to really think about CC. I feel like she hurting them more than helping them. That was on September the 9th, 2025.
With the team struggling to find its rhythm and tensions bubbling behind closed doors, this public family feud might be the most honest glimpse we've seen of what's really going on in Indiana. And trust us, it's not pretty.
Just want to leave this here. Kelsey Mitchell has always and will forever be the best player on the Fever team, other than Tamika catching AB directly after. I said it once and I'll say it again. CC don't have a big enough bag to be the main character of the team. She don't like playing defense, and she can't play through most contact without complaining.
It started with a single tweet. No press release, no official statement, no anonymous rumors swirling through message boards. Just one family member of Kelsey, Mitchell, stepping onto the digital battlefield and firing the first real shot at Caitlin Clark.
Their kids are going to be better than everybody else, right? And the fact is, this statement that's on my screen right here, it's not even factual.
On July 9th, a post appeared online that sent shockwaves through the Fever fan base. The message was blunt: Indiana really needs to think about CC. I feel like she's hurting them more than helping. That one line cracked open a much larger problem, a fracture in team chemistry that's now on full display. This wasn't some random troll. It wasn't a bitter rival or rival fan base. It was blood. A relative of Kelsey Mitchell, someone close enough to the situation to know the pressure, the politics, and the pulse of the locker room. That makes this hit different. It was personal. And what makes it worse is that the post didn't feel like a spontaneous rant. It felt rehearsed, like something that had been said before behind closed doors. Now, finally being aired out in public, the timing couldn't have been more revealing. Clark had been struggling with consistency in her scoring and had recently endured physical matchups that tested her durability. Fans saw the effort. The media saw the potential. But inside the team, at least one voice saw Clark as the problem, not the savior. This wasn't an isolated jab either. The tweet snowballed into a timeline of criticism that kept escalating. And what made it even more surreal was the fact that the family member didn't delete the post right away. It sat there, bold and unapologetic, a challenge to anyone who believed Clark's presence automatically elevated the team. For many, it confirmed a long-brewing suspicion that not everyone in Indiana was thrilled about the Caitlin Clark era. What makes this moment even more damaging is the message behind the message. The phrase "hurting them more than helping" doesn't just critique Clark's performance. It implies that the team's decline or underperformance is because of her, that her arrival has disrupted more than it's improved, and when that kind of sentiment comes from a teammate's family, it raises serious questions about what the players themselves might be thinking but aren't saying out loud. This was the match tossed into the powder keg, and it worked. The tweet immediately gained attention, not just for what it said, but for who said it. Because when someone close to a core Fever veteran decides to speak out against the rookie phenom, it doesn't just stir drama, it exposes the quiet war bubbling underneath the team's public face. And while fans were still processing this, more was coming. The fire had been latent. The next blow was even more direct. If the first tweet was a warning shot, the next wave of posts felt like an ambush. This wasn't just about questioning Caitlin Clark's impact, it was a calculated takedown of her entire game. One relative of Kelsey Mitchell didn't hold back, stating outright that Clark don't have a big enough bag to be the main character of the team, and went even further by calling out her defense, toughness, and mentality. In just a few short posts, Clark's superstar status was put under a microscope, and what they saw, they didn't like. The phrasing was brutal. She don't like playing defense. She can't play through most contact without complaining. That sentence alone touched on one of the biggest criticisms Clark has faced since stepping into the WNBA, that she's struggling with the league's physicality. And while that conversation has been circulating in media circles, hearing it come from within the Fever circle is something else entirely. It suggests a deep-rooted belief that her style of play might not be built for this league, at least not built for leading this team. It didn't stop there. The post went on to predict Clark's future, suggesting that her high-scoring days were already behind her. Sad to say, these games she's having are going to be her new normal. In other words, the relative implied that Clark had peaked was now being exposed in the WW. Kind of narrative, coming from a teammate's camp, isn't just harsh, it's damaging. It turns Clark's rookie struggles into proof of failure rather than growing pains. The deeper implication here is that Clark's rise is being resented by those who've been grinding in the league for years without the same spotlight. Kelsey Mitchell has been with the Fever for 6 seasons. She's endured losses, coaching changes, system shifts, all without national attention or marketing deals. And now, here comes Clark, barely halfway through her rookie season, already being treated as the face of the league. To some, that imbalance stings. To Mitchell's family, it seems like it crosses the line into outright disrespect. But here's the dangerous part. These aren't just personal opinions, they're creating a narrative. And narratives, especially in the WNBA, can shape how players are viewed, treated, and remembered. Clark's public image has been largely positive, but these posts chip away at it. They introduce doubt, they encourage critics, and they place the blame for the Fever's struggles squarely on her shoulders. What makes it worse? There's been no public pushback from Mitchell or her camp. No denial, the silence almost reads like approval, at the very least, tolerance. And that silence speaks volumes. Because as this online firestorm spread, it became clear this wasn't a one-time outburst. This was part of a larger battle for control of the narrative, and up next was a claim that would spark even more debate, the question of who really owns the title of best player on the Indiana Fever. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get messier, another shot was fired, and this time, it wasn't just about Caitlin Clark's performance. It was about legacy. A new post from another Mitchell family member boldly declared that Kelsey Mitchell has always and will forever be the best player on the Fever team other than Tamika Catchings. That sentence hit like a punch to the chest, not just to Clark's fans, but to the entire narrative that the franchise has been trying to build around her. The intent was clear. This wasn't just a praise of Kelsey Mitchell's contributions. Over the years, it was a direct attempt to reframe the conversation. Instead of the Fever being Caitlin Clark's team, this post tried to reposition Mitchell as the true cornerstone of the franchise. And it wasn't subtle. It came packed with comparisons, reminders of Mitchell's consistent presence through losing seasons, her resilience, her loyalty, and her production without the media glitz. To the Mitchell camp, Clark is just a recent headline. Kelsey, on the other hand, is the foundation. What made this post particularly cutting was the implication that Clark hadn't earned her position, that she had been handed the spotlight. It accused her of lacking toughness, questioned her ability to handle contact, and even predicted that her scoring output would decline going forward. The family member even said that Clark can't play through most contact without complaining, framing her as entitled and unprepared for the league's physicality. These kinds of statements don't just damage Clark's reputation, they shift the public perception of the team's internal culture. It also reignited one of the Fever fanbase's oldest debates: who is really the best player on this team? For years, Kelsey Mitchell was the undisputed answer. She was the go-to scorer, the one constant on a team that often felt like it was in perpetual rebuild mode. But now, with Clark's arrival, national attention has swung almost entirely in her direction. even though Mitchell continues to put up solid numbers and has a longer tenure with the team. This conversation was bound to happen. Clark brings in record-breaking viewership and jersey sales, while Mitchell has quietly delivered year after year without the fanfare. The problem is that, now, instead of the debate staying in the hands of fans and analysts, it's spilling out from within, the team's own circle. That kind of fracture can't be ignored. It speaks to a deeper conflict, not just about who's better, but about who deserves the spotlight. And that spotlight isn't just media attention. It's touches on the floor, leadership roles, endorsement opportunities, and ultimately, the direction of the franchise. With Clark dominating headlines, Mitchell's supporters seem to be pushing back against what they see as erasure. The sad truth is, it doesn't matter who's right, it matters that the team is now visibly divided, and just as the argument reached its peak, something strange happened. One of the loudest voices in this family feud suddenly disappeared, literally, and it only raised more questions. Just when the heat of the online feud was boiling over, one of its loudest voices went completely silent. Kelsey Mitchell's sister, and one of the most vocal critics of Caitlin Clark in recent weeks, suddenly deactivated her X account, no explanation, no warning. One day, her posts were stirring the pot, and the next, she was gone. The disappearance sent fans scrambling for screenshots, searching for receipts, and speculating wildly about what really caused her sudden exit. For those who had been following the drama closely, Kelsey's account had been a central part of the narrative. She wasn't just retweeting spicy takes or liking shady posts, she was actively calling out Clark's performance, criticizing her leadership, and boosting Kelsey Mitchell's standing in the process. Her posts didn't sound like heat of a moment, emotional outbursts. They sounded deliberate, calculated, as if she was trying to correct what she believed was a false storyline being told by the media and the league that Caitlin Clark had single-handedly revived the Indiana Fever. Then, without a trace, she vanished. Fans who tried to search her name were met with a blank page. Her tweets were gone. Her voice in the conversation disappeared just as the story was gaining traction across social media. That kind of vanishing act doesn't happen by accident. And when it does, it raises a critical question: was she forced to go silent? There are three main theories circulating. The first is that Kelsey faced internal pressure. With the Fever already under a microscope and national media now catching wind of the feud, it's entirely possible that someone from inside the organization stepped in, whether it was a quiet phone call from PR or a conversation with her sister. It wouldn't be the first time a team tried to control its image by managing the people connected to its players. After all, in the WNBA, perception matters, especially when it comes to the league's most high-profile rookie. The second theory is backlash. Once the screenshots started spreading, Kelsey's comments received fierce criticism from Clark's fan base. Some of the replies were brutal, some were personal. And while Kelsey Mitchell may be used to dealing with the spotlight, her family likely isn't. It's possible that the pressure simply became too much. In a moment where the internet turns hostile, even the boldest voices can decide to log off. The third theory is perhaps the most intriguing: regret. Did Kelsey realize her posts might hurt Kelsey more than help her? Did she see how it could backfire, painting her sister as petty or jealous in a time when the team desperately needs unity? Whatever the reason, her disappearance only added fuel to the fire. Because when someone deletes their platform in the middle of a scandal, it doesn't make the story go away. It amplifies it, and the silence left behind speaks louder than any tweet. But while Kelsey backed away, Kelsey Mitchell stayed completely quiet-handed. That silence, it may be the loudest statement yet. While her family stirred up social media and the fanbase went into full-blown speculation mode, Kelsey Mitchell herself remained completely silent. Not a post, not a like, not a single public word about the controversy swirling around her name. And in a moment where her voice could have clarified, calmed, or corrected the narrative, she chose to say nothing. But that silence, it's beginning to say everything. In professional sports, silence can be interpreted in two ways: maturity or complicity. On one hand, Kelsey might be choosing the high road, letting her game do the talking, refusing to fan the flames of drama and staying focused on basketball. She's a veteran after all. someone who's weathered multiple seasons of rebuilding and chaos within the Fever. Maybe she knows that engaging in social media battles only feeds distractions, and maybe she wants no part of it. But on the other hand, when your family goes on a public crusade against your teammate as high-profile as Caitlin Clark, and you don't distance yourself from those comments, people start asking hard questions. Is Kelsey silently endorsing those views? Is she using her family to say what she can't say publicly? Or is she just letting the narrative play out because, deep down, she agrees with it? Kelsey's silence becomes even more complicated when you consider how direct and personal the attacks on Clark have been. These weren't harmless basketball opinions. They questioned Clark's character, leadership, and toughness. They claimed she was overrated, unable to handle physical play, and not deserving of the lead role on the team. Those are harsh accusations, especially when they come from someone so closely tied to a current teammate, and Kelsey's refusal to comment, especially as the team's longest tenured player, has made the locker room tension feel even more real. There's also a perception issue at play here. When veterans remain silent while a rookie takes all the hits on and off the court, it creates the impression of abandonment. Fans notice, analysts notice, even opposing teams notice. And with Caitlin Clark already shouldering the weight of the franchise, the silence from one of the team's veteran leaders feels less like professionalism and more like quiet resentment. Of course, we can't pretend to know what Kelsey is thinking behind the scenes. Maybe she's addressed the issue internally. Maybe there's been conversations we'll never hear about, but in the court of public opinion, silence is rarely neutral. It either protects or exposes. And in this case, her silence feels more like a shield one that allows her family to speak unchecked while she remains untouchable. It's a strategic kind of quiet, the kind that says, let them talk, I'm not stopping them. But that kind of passive stance only creates more division. And while Kelsey Mitchell might be avoiding the headlines now, her silence has drawn a line in the sand, because as Clark continues to struggle within the Fever's rigid system, even her harshest critics are starting to ask, is this all by design? For all the noise online and behind the scenes, one thing is clear: Caitlin Clark hasn't been set up to thrive in Indiana. While fans continue debating whether she's the problem or the victim, the real issue might not be about her talent at all, it's about the system she's been dropped into. Because right now, the Indiana Fever's offensive scheme is doing her no favors. And the numbers reflect it. Clark entered the league known for her scoring. She lit up college basketball with deep threes, fearless drives, and court vision that made her a generational talent. But in the WNBA, under Stephanie White's motion offense, she's being asked to do something entirely different. Less isolation, less freedom, more structure. Instead of dictating the game's pace, she's adapting to a system that often leaves her playing off-ball or forcing passes into traffic, and it's showing. Her assist numbers have gone up, but her scoring has dipped, her shot attempts have dropped, and her turnovers. They've become a talking point for every critic waiting to say, I told you so. But here's the twist. The very structure that's stifling Clark is the same one that's being used as ammo by her detractors. Her struggles are being used to validate claims that she's not ready, not tough enough, or not built for the pros. But no one's asking whether the system itself is the problem. When Mitchell's family said that Clark didn't have a big enough bag, or that she can't play through contact, they weren't just critiquing her skill, they were pointing to her current performance. But what they failed to acknowledge is that Clark is being forced to play someone else's game. This isn't the Iowa system where everything ran through her. This is a tightly controlled offense, where spacing often collapses, decision-making is rushed, and defensive pressure is unrelenting. Even a veteran would struggle under these conditions. And let's not forget, the WNBA is no joke. The physicality is real. Defenders are stronger, smarter, and more experienced. Every weakness is magnified. But what's frustrating is that instead of adapting the system to highlight Clark's strengths, the Fever have doubled down on trying to fit her into a rigid mold. A mold that doesn't play to her instincts or her elite shot creation. It's no wonder she looks frustrated. It's no wonder her confidence seems to waver from game to game. And it's no surprise that outside voices, especially those close to veteran teammates, are starting to weaponize those stats against her. Because if the system sets her up to fail, then it becomes easy to blame her for not living up to expectations. But make no mistake, this isn't about whether Caitlin Clark is good enough. She is. The question is whether this franchise is building. Around her, we're slowly tearing her down in the name of team balance, and when even the coaching staff starts walking back their early season promises, it becomes painfully clear the system wasn't designed for her. And that's the most dangerous setup of all. When the Indiana Fever brought in Stephanie White as head coach, the message was clear. This team had championship aspirations. White herself echoed that goal in her early press conferences, confidently stating that a title was the objective, and that Caitlin Clark would be a key part of getting them there. Fast forward a few months, and that message has started to unravel. In her latest post-game interview, White backpedaled on those lofty expectations, saying, "That's for everyone else to decide whether we were really ready to be a contender or not." And just like that, the tone changed from bold ambition to cautious deflection. It's not just confusing, it's a problem. The coach sets the tone. When White initially promised championship-level play, she wasn't just hyping up the fans, she was defining the mindset of the locker room. Now, with the team underperforming and drama bubbling behind the scenes, White seems to be dodging accountability. The same coach who once claimed this team was built to win is now blaming rotation issues, injuries, and lack of continuity as reasons for their inconsistency. While that may be partially true, it doesn't explain the glaring disconnect between the coach's original vision and the reality playing out on the court. Clark, meanwhile, is stuck in the middle. She's the one who was promised a leadership role in a winning culture. She's the one shouldering the pressure of an entire franchise revival. And yet, when things go wrong, the excuses pour out from every direction except the one that really matters. Instead of making adjustments to better utilize Clark's strengths, White has clung to a motion of fence that clearly isn't optimized for her. And instead of owning up to that mismatch, the blame is subtly shifted onto execution, scouting recognition, and live-action adjustments. The fans aren't buying it, and neither are the players. White may think her careful phrasing protects her from scrutiny, but her own words have created the standard she's now failing to meet. You can't say we're championship contenders in April and then turn around in July and act like the expectations were never real. That kind of mixed messaging creates confusion, division, and worst of all, distrust. Even veterans on the team have started showing signs of frustration, whether it's body language on the court, subtle post-game comments, or the growing silence on social media. It's becoming clear that something isn't clicking. And when a team's foundation begins to crack, it often starts with the coaching staff. Right now, Stephanie White is sounding less like a leader and more like someone trying to manage fallout rather than fix problems. So where does that leave Clark? Trapped between a broken system and a coach who keeps moving the goalposts. If there's no consistency from the top, how can the team ever expect to build anything real? White's refusal to take ownership isn't just dangerous, and with tensions already boiling between players, families, and fans, the last thing the Fever can afford is a leadership vacuum. But that's exactly what they're facing, and the consequences are starting to show. The Indiana Fever aren't just dealing with a rough patch, they're spiraling into a full-blown identity crisis. From the outside, it may look like growing pains, the expected turbulence of integrating a superstar rookie, but inside the locker room, the cracks are wider than anyone imagined. The truth is, this isn't just about Caitlin Clark struggling to adjust. It's about a team that doesn't know what it wants to be, who it wants to build around, or how to navigate the storm it created by trying to do both. Caitlin Clark was supposed to be the future, arguably the entire league's future. She brought in fans, sponsorships, primetime games, and national headlines. But instead of being embraced as the centerpiece of a franchise rebirth, she's been tossed into a roster still clinging to its old pecking order. Kelsey Mitchell, a longtime cornerstone, clearly has support both in the building and in her inner circle. But the presence of Clark has changed everything media attention touches on the court, and even how leadership is perceived. When family members of Mitchell publicly call out Clark, it's more than a petty social media moment. It reflects deeper frustrations. Mitchell's camp seems to believe their loyalty to the franchise has been overshadowed by a newcomer. And the organization's failure to address that tension has allowed it to fester. Rather than setting the tone from the top, the Fever have let the narrative unfold through cryptic tweets, awkward silences, and confusing coaching quotes. That's not leadership, it's chaos. This team is stuck between two timelines. On one hand, they have veterans like Mitchell who've endured years of losing and expect their moment now. On the other, they have Clark, the league's brightest spotlight, expected to carry the brand into a new era. But those two stories don't blend easily, especially when one is being marketed as the savior and the other is quietly treated as replaceable. And here's where the damage multiplies. When leadership fails to acknowledge the division, it turns whispers into warisms. Every turnover from Clark becomes ammo for critics. Every good game for Mitchell is reframed as proof she's being overlooked. Instead of building around both, the Fever are unintentionally forcing fans and maybe even teammates to pick a side. This isn't just hurting team chemistry, it's hurting performance. On the floor, the Fever look disjointed. Miscommunications, bad shot selection, defensive lapses aren't just technical errors. They're symptoms of a team that doesn't trust each other. You can't compete. At a championship level, when your players are silently questioning roles, direction, and each other's motives, it didn't have to be this way. Clark and Mitchell could have been one of the league's most lethal backcourt duos. But instead of uniting their strengths, the team has let tension define them. Now, the Fever are at a breaking point. Do they protect the old guard and risk losing their future? Or do they go all in on Clark and risk alienating the core? One thing's for sure, if they don't figure it out fast, they won't just lose games, they'll lose the locker room. And once that happens, there's no coming back. The Indiana Fever find themselves caught in a storm of mismanagement, silence, and tension that's threatening to derail everything they hoped to build. Caitlin Clark was brought in to be the future, but instead of being embraced, she's become the lightning rod for criticism, resentment, and confusion. From Kelsey Mitchell's family taking public shots to a coach who's shifted the narrative mid-season, the franchise is spiraling into dysfunction. The real issue isn't just performance, it's identity. The Fever don't know who they are or who they want to be. And unless leadership steps in to unite the roster and define a clear direction, this team risks wasting the rare opportunity they've been given. Clark can still be the centerpiece. Mitchell can still be respected, but only if someone takes control. Because right now, the Fever are burning from the inside end. The damage could be permanent if they don't act fast.